And a TGIF, everyone. Welcome into the First Call podcast for First Bet and Express Bet. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Guest handicapper this week, old school. Back with my buddy Brian W. Spencer. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Really excited to get tapped on the shoulder to sub in here. Got some big shoes to fill, but man, what a really fun, couple cards of racing we're going to talk about. You sent over some past performances yesterday, and I had a blast looking at these Churchill races and Woodbine runs. So really excited to kind of get back in the saddle here with you.
Brian and I work together with Horse Player now for years. Of course, you may know him back in his days with Arlington and Fairgrounds. And Brian, you're still doing some picks each and every day for Express Bet. Tell the fans what you're doing there.
Yeah, I've moved on to a couple different roles in my professional career, but I'm still doing horse racing stuff every single day that there's live racing. You can get 3 picks of mine from a track that, just whichever sounds most appealing to me that day at expressbet.com. So definitely check those out every day. I always have a little bit of fun trying to uncover a couple nice prices.
All right, Brian and Frank in the member section there at expressbet.com each day. So be sure to check out their picks there. We've got a really fun weekend of racing. In fact, this may challenge like the Belmont Stakes Festival for star power. I mean, you kind of might think that's blasphemous as we await Saratoga, but think about this. We've got last year's Kentucky Derby winner, last year's Breeders' Cup Classic winner, this year's Dubai World Cup winner, last year's Horse of the Year in the U.S., last year's Horse of the Year in Canada, all running within a couple hours of each other on the program on Saturday. It's one of the more unprecedented days in racing, and Brian and I are going to take a look at 8 stakes races as we do each week here on the podcast. Let's give the fans who are listening on our traditional audio channels a rundown of the races we'll handicap over the next half hour or so. We'll start things out on the Dominion Day program at Woodbine. We'll look at the Marine Stakes, race number 5 there for potential 3-year-olds. Some of them may have aspirations for the King's Plate coming up later this summer. The Dominion Day handicap will be the feature race on that Saturday card at Woodbine, race number 9. That'll be our second stop. Then we'll go to Churchill Downs and look at all 6 races on this closing weekend card for Stephen Foster Day. We'll start things off with Fleur de Lis in race number 7. We'll go to the Tepin in the 8th, Sprinters into Kelly's Landing in race 9, back to the grass for the Wise Dan, then the Stephen Foster, the featured 11th, and we'll wrap things up with the American Derby for the 3-year-olds on the turf. So huge doings at Churchill Downs and at Woodbine on Saturday. And with that, First Bet and Express Bet fans have a couple great promos to play. There's a $7,500 hit and split at Churchill Downs, going with the early pick 5, the late pick 5, and the late pick 4. So if you take down any of those multi-race wagers when bet with First Bet and Express Bet, you'll add not only your pari-mutuel winnings, but $7,500 split up, $2,500 in each of the 3 different promo sequences. You can add money to your winnings by taking down those pick 4s and pick 5s. And at Woodbine, there's a 2 million point hit and split for first rewards points. If you take down the late pick 4 at Woodbine, Frank Caruli's got a blog up right now at expressbet.com and news.first.com that gives you his insights to all 4 races in that Woodbine late pick 4 sequence. Again, you can split 2 million first rewards points if you take down that late pick 4. Those first rewards points can be redeemed for credits into your wagering account, swag, and handicapping products and things from the pro shop at ExpressBet and at First Bet. So time to get handicapping here. We're going to get Brian right into the fire. We're going to start with some picks here for you. To the Marine Stakes, we go race number 5. I always like to throw a little history into the race names. The Marine Stakes, named for the star of the late 1920s and early 30s, son of Man o' War. He was second in the Travers in the U.S. to Beacon Hill that year, but he was also a star in Canada, winning multiple stakes races north of the border. The Marine Stakes, one of the final prep races towards the King's Plate coming up later this summer. But this race is open company, Brian, grade 3. So you've got some Ontario side runners. You've got some open company runners. Who did you end up with here in the Marine?
Yeah, I'm looking to number 5, Mancetti. It's kind of a tepid pick, but if I'm right, I feel like I'm going to be right. You look at his 2-back run in the Woodstock, absolutely loved it. It was his first race of the campaign here. He just settled nicely, came away really easily. And you just got to draw a line through the last one. He's a forward player, stumbled badly. His jockey lost the iron out of the gate last time out. And he got that terrible break, rush up trip, and was understandably tired by the time they had, turned in for home. So question here going longer, question against this kind of company. But if you draw a line through that last one and you think maybe his new baseline is that 2-back run, he's right there.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back and look at that race in the Woodstock. The one thing about Mancetti is if he survives the first 20 feet of the race, he's in pretty good shape. His 3 losses were all gate incidents. His 3 wins when he gets away cleanly, including this one in the Woodstock.
It goes for the inside. Kokomo pressing Big Vince as they come into the stretch in the Woodstock. And now switching course, Mancetti out wider incoming. Out in front, Big Vince grinding it out with Kokomo. Mancetti launching down the centre, has run past them. Mancetti pouring it on in the Woodstock Stakes. And Pietro Morin darting down the wire. A very big winner. Mancetti scores by almost 4 lengths.
Brian's going with Mancetti in the Marine Stakes. I'll give a look to Sedberry's Ghost right to the inside of him. This is a horse who hasn't run in a stakes race yet and looks like he has no idea what the hell he's doing in his races. He's kind of really goofy and all over the place. And then in the last 100 yards decides, oh my God, I need to get running. He's done it in 2 straight races and really levels off and runs well once he figures it out. He hasn't run around 2 turns yet, a little bit slower pace. Maybe he'll kind of get into a groove. And if he kind of puts it all together, I think Sedberry's Ghost is interesting. So Mancetti, Sainsbury's Ghost, that's the 2 ways we're going to go in race number 5, the Marine Stakes. Let's go to the 9th race on the card. It's the Dominion Day Stakes, grade 3. Of course, Dominion Day is like Independence Day here in the U.S. for our Canadian friends. The 158th birthday for the nation of Canada coming up here on July the 1st, the Dominion Day Stakes race, the feature on the card. A mile and an eighth here on the main track. I thought Essex Serpent was just visually awesome last time out. Enough so that I thought I'm going to take a chance and take this horse right back on the big stakes rise. Then I see you did the same thing.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe a little mid-range price, but his 2 bad races came in those, in the Queen's Plate, Prince of Wales last year, and just came back with the kind of effort that you love to see. Now, if I want to put a little bit of, dampness on it, I'm a little nervous that his 2 biggest wins have come when he's gotten those easy leads. So I've got a little bit of concern, but when he's really good, I think his ceiling is high enough. And I really love the way he fired off the bench. If that, kind of the way I'm looking at Mancetti based on that 2-back run, if I'm hoping this is his new established form, he's right in the mix facing this group today.
The only other horse who may go with him early is Fantastic Again. And Fantastic Again, according to Daily Racing Form columnist Marcus Hirsch today, reported he's cross-entered in the stakes at Lone Star and at Woodbine, that he's headed to Woodbine. So we are going to see Fantastic Again. That could be part of the pace play. But the way Essex Serpent just is showing potential is really exciting. Let's give the fans a chance to see this one. Probably the first time you've seen this runner if you haven't been following the local races at Woodbine. Essex Serpent, last time out, really sharp.
Essex Serpent coming down to the final quarter. Only a length. Roscar looming easily on the outside as the big threat. Essex Serpent only a half. Roscar tapped up as they corner though. Essex Serpent yet to release the brakes. Roscar made a dash. Essex Serpent in front. Roscar still knuckling down on the outside, but Essex Serpent by a couple of lengths now to Roscar, and has a lot left. Essex Serpent inside the final furlong, and Essex Serpent, like the win in the Marine, on the lead all the way, and now digs in to win by about 4 or 5 lengths. Essex Serpent is back. 4.5 to Roscar. 5 away came Journeyman.
Really nice return effort there. Didn't have to get down on his belly and overextend himself. That's kind of what you want to see, I think, second off the layoff. Now, you don't want too much of an effort that first time back that the horse may bounce. I think Essex Serpent, very interesting in there. Again, Fantastic Again for Wesley Ward, one of the Americans headed up that way. Marty Drexler trains Fly the W, a horse Gulfstream Synthetic fans know very, very well. It'll be the first time on the Woodbine Synthetic for Fly the W, but an absolute win machine. And Brian, as a Cubs guy, I mean, you've got to like Fly the W, a 21-time winner, right?
Yeah, I mean, you at least got to admire him on paper for the grit and the longevity and success. But a little bit of a reach for me in this one, despite the win machine here. We'll see how he handles the Woodbine Synthetic, though.
You've been away from Chicago long enough too that you're not going to get sucked into that homer feel on Fly the W, right?
Yeah, no. I'm a North Carolina native now. Let's go.
All right, let's move to Churchill Downs on Saturday, where it's Stephen Foster Day. Big program there. 6 stakes races. We'll look at them in succession, beginning in race number 7. It's the Fleur de Lis Stakes, French for Flower of the Lily, and of course the track of the Lilies was Hollywood Park, the land of the lakes and flowers, but the Lilies for the fillies at Churchill Downs means the Oaks, and we've got an Oaks winner in here, Torpedo Anna, not only an Oaks winner, but last year's Horse of the Year. She was just flat out poor last time out in the La Troyenne, and I guess it kind of opens the door up, right? I mean, she did nothing at 39 cents on the dollar when finishing a career worst 7th. Kenny McPeak rushed her back pretty quick in there. I didn't like the campaign that he gave her to run in the Azeri and the Apple Blossom and then come back in 3 weeks to run on Oaks Day in the La Troyenne. Just didn't seem to make sense to me. I know he wants to run her in front of big crowds and such, but it just didn't seem like good timing and spacing of her races. She's had more time now, about 7 weeks since the Kentucky Oaks now. Do we see Torpedo Anna get back to her win machine ways, or is she vulnerable now, Brian?
I spent quite a bit of time trying to answer that question. I mean, I think that you're supposed to give her, benefit of the doubt based on what we've seen from her. We're supposed to expect better from her here, especially, given that Kenny McPeak also, said brought her back too fast. Fine, that's on me too. And I think that, so, if we're willing to forgive her that, she's going to win this race. She's going to be able to control the tempo with Jin sitting just out of her the whole way. But even on an off race, don't you want to see a little something? I mean, that was an absolute nothing from a horse who has been just machine-like and shows up every time and just the grittiest, biggest kinds of efforts. And she just absolute zero. So I'm going to take my chance and say, not necessarily that maybe she's not going to be what she was late last year, but maybe that last was a hint of something. I think Jin is going to be hooked to her the entire way and is going to be able to be the one to ratchet up that pressure. And if Torpedo Anna's not quite what she was late last year, I think she's going to get past.
She's going to match up with some fillies who have recency over the racetrack in the the Shawnee Stakes back on May 31st. It was Jin and Royal Spa, who we haven't talked about yet. They ran 1-2 in that race with Royal Spa under Flavian Pratt getting the victory. Let's go back to Travis Stone's call of that one, the Shawnee Stakes.
Jin back into second, Alpine Princess in third. Royal Spa the leader. Jin continues to fight on. Jin trying to come back on Royal Spa, but Royal Spa got the jump on her and won it.
Now, she was 13-1 that day, Royal Spa. They say, you don't miss the wedding and then go to the funeral. So I don't know that you want to play Royal Spa back in a 5-horse field at a much shorter price than she was last time. So maybe you've got the right alternative. The value play in here could be Jin under Jose Ortiz. Big day yesterday for Jose Ortiz. I think he rode 7 on Thursday at Churchill, or on Wednesday at Churchill, I should say, a couple days back. He had 4 wins in 2 seconds from 7 mounts. So Jose Ortiz riding extremely well going into closing weekend here at Churchill Downs. This is a race that's, superstars over the years have gone through the Fleur de Lis. We've got another one in Torpedo Anna, but you go back to Serena Song, Rachel Alexandra, Royal Delta, Midnight Beast 2, some really good ones. Latruska more recently have come through this race. We'll see if Torpedo Anna can get back. This is a real crossroads race for her, I feel confident in saying that. When fillies go sour, they go sour sometimes. And if she runs another bad one, you start to, wonder about the rest of the campaign this year and wonder, is she really potentially going back to defend her title in the Breeders' Cup Distaff? If she runs well and she gets right back on the beam, all the discussions are back on the table with her. But she's got to run well. There's a little bit of pressure on Torpedo Anna, I think, for sure. I don't know that I'm confident to bet against her from a gambling standpoint. Maybe taxed, maybe the filly you're looking at in this particular spot here, Royal Spa. But I need to get a fair price. I mean, I think you want at least $10, $12 if you're going to try to beat Torpedo Anna on anything.
Yeah, I agree. And, Royal Spa, you mentioned a little bit of a wild card for me because I don't want to introduce too many what ifs in a very small field. But, if Torpedo Anna isn't heading back in the right direction and she and Jin get a little bit too cute with a cat and mouse game early, Royal Spa could just be sitting there watching all that unfold. And if that happens and Anna comes back and Jin spins her wheels again late, it's just a repeat of the last one in the stretch. So I wouldn't talk anybody off Royal Spa today. I just think the race shape favors one of those two forward players.
You're going to go with Jin, and I'm going to welch in this one. I'm just going to watch. I don't want to touch this race. I know I had you come on the podcast and made you pick 8 races in here, but I mean, from a gambling standpoint, I really don't want to bet against Torpedo Anna with confidence, and I don't want to play her either. I just want to kind of see what she's got for the rest of the campaign. That's kind of where I'm stuck at in the Fleur de Lis. But I do like gambling, so we're going to go after another one here in the 8th, and that's the Tepin Stakes. Of course, Tepin Stakes named for the 2-time Breeders' Cup mile-winning filly. She won the Queen Anne Stakes also, or one-time Breeders' Cup Mile. She lost her title defense in the Breeders' Cup Mile, but she won the Queen Anne in 2016 going to Royal Ascot. Her last 15 starts of her career, 11 wins, 4 seconds for Tepin. She was an absolute machine-like mare on the turf. The race in her name is a mile on the grass here at Churchill Downs, a track where she ran well in her career. The Tepin Stakes, I went with number 2 in here, Something Stronger. I kind of like the form cycle here. I know it's a maiden winner stepping up into the allowance ranks or into the stakes ranks and bypassing all the allowance races, but Al Stahl, pretty conservative trainer, and this one's got the old school form cycle to me. Sprint the route, second off the layoff. It's kind of like we got one in her last time, and she actually launched late and looked impressive in there. I'm going to give her a big shot going sprint the route in here. Something Stronger with a good post under James Graham. I'm going to go with the 2 in here, Something Stronger. Who do you like in the Tepin, Brian?
I do like Something Stronger a bit too. I think this is a race where, especially in multi-race wagers, I think it's the right race to attack the 2 morning line favorites with some of these mid-range price horses. I'm going outside with the 8 Favor to You. I'm hoping that she's going to get a little overlooked because her only route try, it's the dullest run on her page, but she had a really tricky trip that day, really starting, stopping, tapping the brakes in between horses the entire way, wanted to do a little bit more. In the meantime, the 3-2 favorites running off on the front end to score. So by the time they turned in, she was probably pretty annoyed and didn't have a whole lot left in the tank. But she came back with 2 sprint wins. The pedigree's there for 2 turns the whole way. I think she's a lot better than we saw in that mile run, and the rest of her form is just nothing to pick at. So I think she's going to be tough today at a really or Saturday rather at a really nice number.
Phil D'Amato trains Favor to You. West Coaster Antonio Fresu coming in to ride. Let's take a look at her win in allowance company at Santa Anita.
Top of the lane, Proud Starlet every step of the way. Prime and Ready up alongside second, and Favor to You angles out for the final furlong. It is Proud Starlet clinging narrowly. Prime and Ready just ahead back second, and Favor to You is finishing best of all. Does she have the time? Prime and Ready, Favor to You. Here's the line. Favor to You. Perfectly timed to give Reese Bully a double.
Play of the day.
Interesting in here, the 2 favorites that we're looking at, Vixen and also Lush Lips. They've been chasing Nitrogen, who has been clearly ahead of everybody in the 3-year-old filly division on the turf so far this year. I don't know. Do they get plaudits because they've been kind of second and third best to the tops of the division? Is it like, without Nitrogen in this race, do we just defer to those other 2, Lush Lips and Vixen? I'm willing to take a shot, though, because, again, this is a race where these horses stepping up in class, I think have a chance to perform pretty well in here at fair prices. So you and I are in the kind of the same boat in this one.
Yeah, but the other 2, Lush Lips and Vixen, you're exactly right. Nitrogen is, the queen of the class right now, and there's not a question about it. But we know what those 2 are. They're established right now. They're kind of baseline form, what we expect from them. I think Favor to You, question mark with some upside going long. Something Stronger, question mark with some upside going long. And if we're going to get somewhere in that, 7 to 8, 9 to 1 range on either of those, I'd be happy being like 2 deep and just taking an aggressive stand with a couple of those horses with upside.
All right, let's do it. Race number 8. Maybe we can get a price there at Churchill in the Tepin Stakes. To the Kelly's Landing in race number 9, named for the Eddie Keneally sprinter back in 2005, set the track record 107-2. That time has been eclipsed once, but not by much since then, going back 20 years. Still one of the great performances, going 6 furlongs at Churchill Downs in the Aristides back in 2005. Of course, Kelly's Landing also went on to win the Dubai Golden Shaheen 2 years later overseas in the UAE. We've got some good sprinters in here. Dr. Venkman in from the West Coast. Very interesting, of course. You've got the Wind Machine Booth, who's won 7 of 10, including 4 straight. Steve Asmussen's barn hasn't done much at this meet at Churchill Downs. He did pop a nice priced winner earlier this week, but his barn has struggled. 7% wins coming into the week for the season with more than 100 starters for Asmussen. Can Booth snap that kind of bad mojo going for the barn? He's going for 5 straight wins. I question 6.5 for Booth. That's where I think he might be vulnerable here. He's absolutely, to me, a pure 6 furlong horse.
Completely agree. I think there are a few questions that I had about some of the obvious horses on paper that led me to take a big reach here that I'll get to in a second. One of those is that 6.5 furlong trip. We're at 6 furlongs. Booth probably wins this. Dr. Venkman, I think he can win this, but I don't love the rail for him with horses like Booth and Roll On Big Joe potentially going to cross over in front of him. Think that could be tricky. So I took a big reach with the number 7 Red Flag. Jeremy, I remember one time in the Pimlico parking lot, you told me the longer it takes you to to explain why you like a horse, the less you actually like them. So I'm going to keep it short. I don't know if he's good enough to win this on paper, but he's a $60 horse on Saturday if he does win this. I'm hoping Booth takes out, Roll On Big Joe goes after him, Otto the Conqueror adds a little bit more heat, Dr. Venkman gets stuck inside. All of these middle moves happen in succession, and it set things up for a cheap clunk along winner like Red Flag. I don't think he's the best horse in here. He needs multiple misfires or, benefits from the race flow to get this done, but he chased a loose winner last time out, and I think he gets a better setup today.
I'll never tell a horse player that it's not worth digging around in a race, no question about it. But for me, my experience always tells me the ones you like right away. And that's when you get your best opinions, I think, often. Sometimes you just look at a race and it jumps out at you. Hopefully you can get your price in here with Red Flag. Booth will be the favorite, though. He's been 4-5 and 2-5 in his last two, winning the Count Fleet at Oaklawn and last out winning the Maryland Sprint.
On the inside is Ridden Along for More with a quarter to go at Pimlico. Booth, Epic Ride is trying to test, but Booth shakes away through a 45.99 half mile. Booth is in front, Ridden Along with 1 furlong left to go. Epic Ride is giving his all. Booth is still there and staying strong. Booth, Epic Ride, 1-2 down the Pimlico stretch. Booth will scorch home to win. Epic Ride, big race second. Celtic Contender SS Sinatra.
I got to admit, though, Brian, when you told me I told you something in the parking lot at Pimlico, I was a little worried.
Could have been anything.
Let's move on to the 10th race at Churchill Downs. It's the Wise Dan Stakes. Now, this is a two-time Breeders' Cup Mile winner, 2012, 2013. All he did was earn $7.5 million. And why would Churchill Downs name a race after him? Get this resume locally for Wise Dan. Two-time winner of the Firecracker, two-time winner of the Turf Classic, won the Clark on the dirt and missed by a nose when running second in the Foster on the dirt. He had a pretty good Churchill Downs resume. If you're going to name a race after a horse who's run at Churchill, the Wise Dan's about as good as you can get. A mile and a 16th on the turf here. They could run this at any distance on either surface, and it would be apropos for Wise Dan. Who do we have in this race that we like? No Wise Dan's in here as far as the standout goes. This looks to me like a very competitive race from the morning line standpoint, from the potential odds. This looks like a race I don't think there's going to be a lot of spread in the tote.
Yeah, and I think, that's kind of bouncing around. I think this is probably one of the most, if not the most competitive one that we're going to talk about on the show. You can make a case for just about any of them. But what led me to Fort Washington, the number 8 here, is that, there's a lot of commonalities here in the running lines. A lot of these horses have run into Spirit of St. Louis already this year. But Fort Washington's going to come into this with a couple of grade 3 wins. And I think that that's just going to look a little bit soft to a lot of the players when a lot of these are coming out of, the grade 1 Turf Classic where they chase Spirit of St. Louis, but they all stack up the same behind that guy. And Fort Washington has been really good in a couple of starts since then. Little bit worried about whether he's going to get the pace here, but I'm just hoping a couple of those forward players will just keep things honest enough, because he's the scary one late, and I think he's going to get a little overlooked.
Let's take a look at Fort Washington. Last time out, Dave Rodman on the call from the dinner party at Pimlico.
Sure, as they move around that turn, and Balnikov's still a lot to do. They race to the top of the stretch in the dinner party, and it's Abramar holding a narrow lead. Trickery's trying to fight on it between horses. Fort Washington has a turn of foot, and down to the inside. Cash Equity also quickening up. Balnikov is way back, 1 furlong left to go. Fort Washington, Cash Equity charging hard second. The far outside Desvio is coming with a late run, but it's too late. Here's Fort Washington to win. Fort Washington, Cash Equity, Desvio, Devon.
I'm a fan of Fort Washington. He's not a fan of me, though. He wins when I'm off of him, and when I go against him, he wins the race. So I think he's a horse who I'm not picking this time, which is really good news for you, because he'll probably post another victory. I thought Event Detail was a little bit interesting in here, getting off the rail. Kind of a clunky start-and-go trip last time out in a really slow pace. This race looks like it has a little more defined pace to me, and I think that's going to push him a little farther back. He was kind of too close to the pace for his own running style. style last time. Maybe he can get a better setup here. Irad Ortiz, you get a jockey change off of a, I don't want to say questionable ride, but certainly a questionable trip last time. And I think maybe just shaking up the jockey, shaking up the potential pace in here. I don't think they're going to go 48 and 2 to the half in this spot. So I give Event Detail a chance at a price in here. You always get a little bit less than you probably should when Irad rides. He just takes money, but I think we can get a fair number on him. I went with Event Detail. Mercante in here may go as the favorite, but he's won 4 of his last 5 or 3 of his last 4, but he's done those at prices for the most part. Now you got to take a little bit of a shorter number on Mercante. I think he might be a little bit beatable in here at an underlay price. So I'll go against him in here, not with any great confidence, but I do want to try to find a bit of a price in here. Maybe Event Detail can be that. Fort Washington, a ton of respect for him and anything that Shug puts out there. So certainly big respect in there in the Wise Dan. Fort Washington for Brian, and I'll take my chance in there. Just a little bit of a price play with Event Detail, top choice for me in the 10th. Let's go to the featured race on the card. The 11th, it's the Stephen Foster Stakes. They've only run this race since 1982, one of the newer stakes on the schedule for venerable old Churchill Downs at 150 years plus now. But winners like Black Tie Affair, Awesome Again, Victory Gallop, there have been big names, Street Cry, Gunrunner, Curlin. A lot of big names have won this race, but I don't know that there's been a better gathering of resumes in this race in its history, because like we talked about at the top of the show, you've got a Kentucky Derby winner. In fact, the Kentucky Derby 1-2 rematch in this race. You've got the Dubai World Cup winner. You got a winner of the Ali Sheba over this track. There's a lot of good Churchill Downs representation in here. Mindframe coming off a win in the Churchill Downs Handicap, which might have been the race of the year to this point, in that 5-way scrum to the wire on Derby Day on the undercard. There's a lot of cool resumes in this race. There's only 7 entered. 6 of them have a legitimate shot in here, I think. The 7 is Ashcroft, and we'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention Ashcroft. Will run in the name of trainer D. Wayne Lucas, who stepped away from training, retired from training earlier this week due to serious health issues and complications. So Baz Nickel, his longtime assistant for more than 20 years, will saddle Ashcroft in the name of D. Wayne Lucas, and maybe the final, I think it will be the final starter for Lucas at Churchill Downs in his name. And so I don't think Ashcroft has any chance in there, but there wouldn't be a dry eye in the building if he was able to pull off a victory in there for the coach D. Wayne Lucas. But let's talk about the main big contenders in here, because there are no, there's no extra in here. There's no fat to this race. It is all muscle. First Mission, Mindframe, Skippy Longstocking, Sierra Leone, Mystic Dan, Hit Show. This is a good cast, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, if you start to, you could talk yourself into anything here. You're looking at a $3.6 billion earner in Skippy Longstocking, who's probably the biggest reach of all those horses you just named. That seems crazy. Then you look at Hit Show, and who's earned $7 million by the 5th of April and is not going to be the favorite in a June Grade 1. That's this race. This is crazy. It's such a good collection of talent. And where I'm going here is I just think Sierra Leone is the best horse in here. Last time out, small field, got stuck, behind a freewheeling front running, very talented Louisiana bred. Don't discount the talent of Touch Upon a Star there in that race. But Sierra Leone, that wasn't the be all end first race of the campaign. And I think when shove past the 8th pole, he's going to be able to outkick this group. But man, I wouldn't talk you out of anybody. Mindframe, I don't even like Mystic Dan that much, and I've got him picked second. I think he's going to get the right kind of trip. So, I mean, like you said, it is a great group and a great handicapping challenge too.
Yeah, Mystic Dan feels like he could trip out in this spot. I mean, First Mission, Mindframe, Skippy Longstocking, the 1, 2, 3. None of them are blitzing front runners, need the lead types, but all 3 probably want to be near the front in this spot. First Mission made the lead in this race last year and faded to run 4th. This is a much tougher cast than that group that was in this race last year. No doubt about it. Kings Barnes, Pyrenees. I mean, those horses would be, 10 to 1 plus, I think, against some of the top end of this race. So this is a tougher spot, but First Mission with the rail under Sias, he probably goes. Mindframe's going to be right up there coming out of those one-turn races at Gulfstream and at Churchill in the Churchill Downs handicap. Skippy's never far out of it, and from the 3-hole under Jose, he's going to be up into the mix. He was second in this race, chasing around the track last year and wound up 3rd. So I think the races 1, 2, 3 kind of all go, and that's why you kind of see Mystic Dan in the 5-hole and Brian Hernandez coming over and just hugging the pine like we know he loves to do. Mystic Dan could get an absolutely fabulous trip in here and get that first run on Sierra Leone like he did in last year's Kentucky Derby. Let's go back and relive that one. Kentucky Derby 2024. We get a rare 1-2 rematch as 4-year-olds.
Mystic Dan toward the inside. Stronghold is next. Then Fierceness. Sierra Leone and Forever Young still with work to do. Forever Young is starting to pick it up as they come toward the top of the stretch. It is Fierceness who's moving up on the outside of Crack Phantom, and there on the far outside. Here comes a run from Stronghold and Resilience has now moved up to take the lead as Fierceness is given way, coming by the 16th hole, and Mystic Dan is now come through on the inside. It is Mystic Dan down toward the inside with the lead in the final 16th. Forever Young, Sierra Leone is coming. These three coming down to the wire. Who's it going to be? Oh, it's a photo of the Derby. Oh, it's a photo. Was it Mystic Dan or was it Sierra Leone? Forever Young was between them, catching freedom, finish fourth. A photo finish to decide the 100.
And, there's a lot of other talent in here, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I could see Mystic Dan and Sierra Leone getting that exact same run. Mystic Dan getting the watch it all unfold trip, sneaks through, and then tries to hold off Sierra Leone, while all of these other talented horses are trying to finish too. But it had not occurred to me until you showed that replay that you really could see something very similar Saturday.
Absolutely. Now I want to talk a little bit about Hit Show. He's the Dubai World Cup winner who that race didn't come completely out of nowhere in his career, but coming off the dull effort when he went west to Santa Anita for the Gold Cup or for the Santa Anita Handicap out there in March, it kind of was out of left field because you thought, well, man, he just didn't pick up a hoof in that race at Santa Anita, but he got back on the beam. And I wonder, there's sometimes jockeys just pair with horses right. Look at the past performance lines for Hit Show when Florent Giroux rides. Win Dubai World Cup, win Louisiana Stakes. Then he's not on when they lose to Clark. Then he wins the Fayette, Lucas Classic, West Virginia Governor Stakes. They lost once in the Cornhusker and won the allowance race prior. He's got 6 wins in his last 7 starts, team with Florent Giroux, and he doesn't run, and he just doesn't run for anybody else, it seems like. Giroux seems to know how to push the buttons on Hit Show. I think he's doing really well. I love the workout tab for him coming into this race. This looks like a horse who, after he came back from that race the first week at Maidan, has been pointed to this spot by Brad Cox ever since, and he looks like he has hit every point in the training. May 17th, May 24th, May 31st, June 8th, June 14th, June 21st, and he's progressively working stronger and stronger up to the race. I think Hit Show is going to run a really good race. I think he's going to be completely overlooked in the tote here, but you've got to run the race of your life to beat like 4 of these, right? I mean, like, because there's just no weak links in here. Somebody really good is going to run 5th or 6th.
Yeah, and even if you get 2 misfires, you're still running into 2 of the better older handicap horses here. So you're not going to be able to win this with excuses. I love the point about Giroux with Hit Show. You got to see that again in the Dubai World Cup. This is a horse who just needs like a lot of encouragement late, and Florent's really good at just staying after a horse in a spot like that. My question is Hit Show just a really decent grade 2 horse who ran the race of his life last time out? You're gonna get a decent price to find the answer to that question, but I'm not totally sold.
I think Mystic Dan's got a shot in here. I mean, look, I would be a little surprised if Skippy Longstocking is good enough to beat these upper class horses. He seems to be just a touch below those when we're talking mile and an eighth and beyond. First Mission to me would be a surprise. I see a lot of people on Twitter talking up First Mission and how the morning line's way too high on him and how he's much better than he's showing. I know he won the Oaklawn Handicap with a 109 buyer, but Banishing hasn't come back to run as well since. Skippy Longstocking did come out of that race and win the Gold Cup out at Santa Anita, but I'm not so sure if First Mission at a mile and an eighth beats these horses. You know, I think he's a good up to about a mile and a 16th type runner. At a mile and an eighth against top class horses, I'm a little worried about First Mission, but I can absolutely see Mindframe winning it, Sierra Leone, Mystic Dan, and even Hit Show. Those are the 4 I think have a chance to win, and I think Hit Show is going to be clearly the better price of the 4 that we throw out there. So that's where I'm going to lean in this particular spot, but I'm going to use Hit Show with Mystic Dan. I'm going to use him with also Mindframe in there, and maybe if Hit Show gets the trip from the back of the pack, Sierra Leone might as well. The one thing that I looked at, I looked at the DRFPPs and also downloaded the Brisk Pass performances because I think a finisher is going to have a really good chance in this race. Who can close. The the Brisk late pace figures for Sierra Leone aren't as strong as you would think for watching his running style. He really doesn't come home with big numbers. Hit shows come home faster in some of those. So I thought bigger price, better late pace figures. If they get the same kind of trips, maybe I'll take the horse who's going to be 8-1 versus the horse who's going to be 2-1. So we're both handicapping the race for the closer. You've got Sierra Leone. I've got Hit Show. I know this. We're going to enjoy this edition of the Stephen Foster, Brian. This is a really, really good race.
It is going to be so much fun. And even when you talk about First Mission, that's a horse what kind of horse is he right now? That Oaklawn Handicap race was awesome, but can he do it against this type? 3 grade 1 starts on his page, none of them good, no company lines, no names in the company lines, like what you're seeing among the other horses here who've been running into guys like Fierceness and Forever Young. So huge class test for him, but, certainly wouldn't want to get stuck there at a short price, but yeah, a lot of fun. Wouldn't try to talk you out of a whole lot here, but I just think it's also a fun one to sit back and watch.
And we probably spent 32 seconds on Mind Frame, right? I mean, we need to
right.
And he's run 6 times with 4 wins, 2 close seconds, including a wandering Belmont that if he'd have run straight in the final 16th, he'd be a Belmont Stakes winner. So there is just a lot to like about the Stephen Foster. Enjoy it. Go deep in multi-race wagers, I would say. You definitely want to use a couple of your bullets there. If you're playing those hit and split wagers with First Bet and Express Bet, the late pick 4, the late pick 5, I'm going to recommend you use several in there. Like I said, I think there are 4 win contenders. I would be 4 deep in the multi-race wagers, and that's throwing out a couple horses that have a decent chance as well, according to a lot of other handicappers. But you can't play them all unless you've got a really strong opinion in some of the other races. The 12th and final will wrap up that pick 4 and pick 5 with the hit and split provisions for First Bet and Express Bet players. It's the American Derby. They've only been running this sucker since 1884 in Brian's old Chicago home. They started at Washington Park and had a little cup of coffee at Hawthorne, long run at Arlington Park, came to Churchill in 2022. Then they ran it at Ellis Park in 2023 when the turf was all messed up. Back to Churchill Downs here in 2025 for the American Derby, $250,000 on the grass for the 3-year-olds, of course. Reagan's Wit coming off a win in the Jimmy Murphy on Preakness Day. He's got some good form in here. I thought Freedom's Not Free is an interesting horse as potential lone speed. Mark Glatt and Antonio Fresu bring in this miler from Southern California. I don't think there's a lot of pace in here. I ended up on Freedom's Not Free. I think you've got Fresu once earlier in the card, or I've got him one other time. So could be a good day for Antonio Fresu. What say you here in the American Derby?
Yeah, I mean, this is another fun one where I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is Tistastic doing here? He's 2 for 2 on the turf. He handles it, right. But he's a horse who's earned $1.5 million. He's a grade 2 winner on the Triple Crown Trail. There's a lot of money out there on the dirt. So, maybe kind of dividing the bullets, so to speak, but I don't love him here in an ungraded turf race. He can win this. Maybe he's just a cut below that top set Sovereignty and Journalism, and that's why they're getting him to turf, but I don't love it. I'm on the 5 here, Minaret Station. First question, there's no way this horse is 15-1, right?
It's been a long layoff. He was 38-1 at Keeneland, but I think he'll be shorter than that because he was so visually impressive in that race. Fans haven't seen him in a long time. I know you like him in this spot. I like him as well. I think he's one of the other main threats in this particular spot because of the way he impressed so much visually at Keeneland. Let's give the fans a chance to see that race. Turn back the time to October for the Bourbon Stakes. Minaret Station. He's not going to get a lot of calls in this one, but he's going to get the right one at the end.
Cavallo Bay is up to 3rd, has to go toward the center of the course, still 5 lengths off the lead. Warlander still has 6 to make up. They turn for home. They've all got to catch Clock Tower, and here's Cavallo Bay, and Golden Afternoon now kicks in. Cavallo Bay, Golden Afternoon, Clock Tower fighting onto the inside. Warlander is still 4th. Cavallo Bay far outside. Clock Tower inside. Golden Afternoon between that pair. Golden Afternoon. Clock Tower. Here's Minaret Station for a huge upset. Minaret Station. 38-1 rallying for Christian Torres.
Kurt Becker had to do a double take when he looked up at the tote board when they crossed the wire there. 38 to 1. I mean, you don't rally that way unless you're 3 to 5, not at 38 to 1. So that was a really impressive where did it come from kind of race out of the Will Walden trainee. We haven't seen him since. A workout tab looking at the spacing, May 19th, May 26th, June 1, June 9, June 15, June 22nd. He's right on cue. You like to see a horse off a long layoff have those 6 consecutive workouts for the comeback. He's to a T, Brian. He's where he wants to be if he's ready to go. Will Walden's put into him what you want to see. He's got a shot in here. He'll be flying late.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly really excited to see him in this spot because, you know, Tistastic's going to take some cash to a couple of other kind of upstart types. Like you said, he was 38 to 1 last time out and he's coming off the bench, but that was a really legitimate race. And if he's moved forward off of that into his 3-year-old season, I bet he's the best turf router in this group.
And look, he's a horse who didn't get a massive buyer speed figure in that. As visually impressive as it was a 78 buyer, and that's a good thing because if you're visual handicapping, you really don't care about the numbers so much. And that big number would get a lot more attention on the tote board in his return race. The fact that it was only a 78 and some of the other horses have run faster is going to be good for your price. And I think that's what you want to see. If you get Minaret Station here at a middling kind of price, he's 15 in the morning line. I think 10 and above is a nice number to go and attack him. One note about Tistastic, you say, why are they back? I know he ran the 2 times on turf last year at Kentucky Downs. Why are they going back to the grass here? I think a big part of it is one of the co-owners in here, obviously, is Ron Winchell Thoroughbreds. They are also one of the principal owners of Kentucky Downs. So they want to run horses at Kentucky Downs at their track. That's why Tistastic was there last year, ran in the juvenile mile. I think you're trying to get this horse ready for a September race coming up at Kentucky Downs. That's where the money's going to be for him. Dueling Grounds Derby, something like that, a big money race there at their home track. I think that's why this horse is in this race, getting ready for Kentucky Downs a little bit later and not getting ready for something like the Jim Dandy or the Travers or something, the Haskell.
And that's a great call out. With a little bit of my time away from racing, I forget that those races are like $5 million at Kentucky Downs now. So yeah, actually there is plenty of money for Tistastic if they want to avoid journalism and sovereignty the rest of the way.
That's not a bad idea, avoiding journalism and sovereignty as we've seen in 2025. That's going to wrap up our handicapping from the show. A couple notes for you. Sunday is closing day of the meet at Churchill Downs. So it's a mandatory payout in the Rainbow Six coming up on Sunday. Going into Thursday, they were up over $1 million plus. If this thing carries a couple days into Saturday, into Sunday, a few more days, we could be looking at a multi-million dollar pool for Churchill Downs. Again, mandatory payout Sunday in the Rainbow Six at Churchill. Also, because it's the end of the fiscal calendar year at Gulfstream Park in Florida, they got to clear the books there. So there will be a mandatory payout in the Gulfstream Park Rainbow Six as well on Sunday. Friday night racing tonight. Be sure to check out the Penn Mile at Churchill Downs, the Penn Mile at Penn National. $10 money back special on your win bets if they finish second or third when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet, not only in the Penn Mile but also in the Philly race, the Penn Oaks as well. So Frank Caruli's got your picks lined up for that for Penn National. Frank, a native, grew up going to Penn National, a native Penn Stater. So Frank's got the picks set up for you for Penn Mile night. You can check those out at expressbet.com and at news.first.com. Saturday, we've got a lot around the country. The Francis Dash Day also at Laurel Park. So a lot of racing going on there. And at Canterbury Downs, it's Canterbury Park. It is the Derby Day, Canterbury Derby night. 10 times first rewards points on all your bets at Canterbury Downs or Canterbury Park. Coming up on Saturday night. So there's a lot to hit, a lot of great racing around the country. Great promos for you with First Bet and Express Bet when you play this weekend. Check out Brian's picks each and every day at expressbet.com. In the members section, you got to be a member to get those picks from Brian and Frank each and every racing day. Spence, it was like old times, man. You just got right back in the saddle and you were riding in rhythm. It's like you've been doing this forever.
Man, a lot of fun and just, a great opportunity to fill in. So I appreciate you tapping me on the shoulder and tapping me in here for this one.
Scott Shapiro with the week off. And of course, we send out our best wishes and get well wishes to our great friend, Jeff Siegel, as he recovers from some health issues. Hopefully we'll have Jeff back on the podcast here in the future. But for everybody with First Bet and Express Bet, enjoy a star-studded weekend of racing. Final racing weekend of June, and it might be one of the best of the calendar year. I'll see you on Tuesday when we come back with the It's Official podcast. Have a great weekend, everybody.